So the NFL draft recently wrapped up. We've already had a segment out about it. It was a little bit outdated, but that's okay. And we did a little mock draft, and most of the first like five, six, seven picks were pretty chalky. Like even though we did
Yep.
that segment before the draft, most of it still held up. We got Caleb Williams, we got Jaden Daniels, we got Drake May, we got most of it. But the one thing that I don't think any mock draft had was the big shocker of the night, Michael Penix going to the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. There we are.
Yeah.
Um, I know we talked a little bit about it right before the podcast, but we were both shocked by this pick. Um, it's we've had a little bit more time to digest about it. The Falcons had gone on interviews as to what their thinking was, why they wanted to draft him. Um, so having this context more than a week or so after the draft, what is your opinion on it now?
I still think it's stupid. I mainly because I look at it from what Penix's reaction to the whole, all the interviews that have come out and everything. You got to think in his head that he's just not too happy about it because the owner outright came. I don't remember if he said 4 or 5 or whatever, however many years he said. It was more. It was more than you would expect to sit behind a quarterback. He's basically being guaranteed a backup spot until he's nearly 30, which is
Yeah,
ridiculous. Like it'd be a different, and this is the same thing I told you before. It'd be a different story if he was 21 or 22. He's 24. Like he's on the older side of the rookie quarterbacks, and I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Sure, you are guaranteeing as a franchise that whenever Kirk Cousins wants out or retires or whatever, you're going to be ready. You're going to have a guy who's ready to take up that job. But that guy is not going to be too happy with you. At least in my opinion. At least that's the way I look at it. I don't know. I don't know about you.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of along the same lines if it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially drafting that high. But I can
Yeah.
play devil's advocate a little bit. In terms of the comment that the owner made, or the GM or whoever it was, um, in terms of saying like he could sit 4 or 5 years, it's not that they plan to sit him 4 or 5 years. I think the most likely thing is that they'll sit him 2 years, and then they have an out in Kirk Cousins' contract, where they can get out of it with like almost no consequences. That's probably what'll happen. Um, his comment more was more like, if we have two quarterbacks that both could start and we have to sit one of them for 4 or 5 years, that's not a bad problem to have. Which I
Okay.
mean, yes, but it's also
True.
is a little bit of a misallocation of resources.
Yeah.
Um, but it is interesting. I mean, they've come out and straight like said that this is based on the Packers' way of doing things. And it was the Jordan Love pick that was made 4 years ago. They just started this year. The same thing. He
Yeah.
sat for 2 years, and people just greatly questioned that pick. You've got Aaron Rodgers. Why would you do this? It doesn't make any sense. Same thing happened with Aaron
Sure.
Rodgers when Brett Favre was in the building. Both of those have worked out. It has about a perfect success rate. Um, there's a couple things different about it, but I don't know. Like viewing it through that lens in terms of like this is a strategy that's worked before, does that change it at all for you, or do you feel like there's reasons why it's not going to be the same as like an Aaron Rodgers or a Jordan Love this year?
I mean, it's not. I won't outright say that it's a dumb pick if you're just looking at the future. If you're just looking at how things might look 3 or 4 or even 5 years down the road, it might be a smart move. Who knows? Maybe in 5 years we'll be looking at it as holy shit. The Atlanta Falcons are the smartest franchise to ever live because they grabbed Penix when he was super young and he came in ready to replace Kirk Cousins and all that. I just look at it as the fact of it is the complete opposite of what you were telling the entire league when you took Kirk Cousins. When you picked him up, you were telling everyone that we want to contend. We want a shot at this thing. And when you had a chance to either add to your defense or add to the weapons you could give Kirk Cousins, you instead chose to get his replacement. And I mean, we even heard about it. There was plenty of things that came out afterwards, including the Falcons. I think saying that the Kirk, unsurprisingly, wasn't happy with the pick because, I mean,
Yeah.
exactly the point I just made. It's the type of thing where you are pretty much telling the guy that you just paid millions of dollars that you don't fully believe that he has it, and you brought him
Yeah.
in not to win, but instead to get you ready for the future, which clearly he doesn't want to do. If that's not, if he wasn't at all involved in the choice prior, then clearly that's not something, and he wasn't. I think there was something that came out that said that Kirk Cousins wasn't made aware of the pick until I think either right
Yeah.
before the pick or draft day. And I mean,
Yeah.
you got to think that's immediately going to put just a bad taste in the mouth of the guy you just paid to be your guy. So I don't know. It's the type
Yeah.
of thing where I don't like it. I think it's a bit different than the Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love situation because of where the pick is. That also kind of
Yeah.
changes things
That's
for
a
me
good point.
because of the fact I believe. Do you remember when Jordan Love was picked? Because
It was
all
like
of a sudden
late.
I
It was like
don't.
mid to late 20s.
Yeah,
Mid to
and I
late
think
20s. It was
Aaron
not a
Rodgers
top
was
10
similar.
pick.
Aaron Rodgers was similar,
Yes.
and
Like Aaron Rodgers fell.
yeah, and that
Aaron
I think
Rodgers
more
fell
than
quite a
anything
bit.
that Aaron Rodgers situation made it a bit more. Like if Penix had fell back to 20, do you think people would have been more as mad at this pick?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't think so. I mean, it was still a weird fit. Um, I think based on reporting, Penix wasn't making it past 13 or whatever it was to the
Yeah.
Raiders, wherever the Raiders picked. That was where the last possible spot Michael Penix was going to go, which is strange because leading up to the draft, I think he was one of those players where like the draft quote unquote experts or gurus or the people who put on mock drafts not nearly as high on him as the teams were. Same thing with like Bo Nix, and it's so many teams are quarterback needy where we saw 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12. Um, that's the kind of thing. And if Penix didn't get drafted by the Falcons, it would have been 6 in the top 13. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Lots of teams need quarterbacks, so I don't think there was a possibility of a fall. And the way that the Falcons put it is, we're not going to have a chance to draft a quarterback this high forever. And I think their thought is, with Kirk Cousins, we're going to be very good. Like they're betting on
Okay.
themselves to say
Yeah.
we're going to be very good. And the reason we take Penix now is because we're not going to have this top draft pick. This is we're going to be in the playoffs and we're going to be picking in the mid 20s. We're not going to have a chance to draft someone this high. Not to mention the quarterback draft classes for the next year. I don't know about a couple years. I don't know if anybody's taken a look at that yet, but I know the next quarterback draft class is supposed to not be very good, especially not as good as this draft class.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the lens they're looking through in terms of like, this is our only chance to do this. And while we have Kirk Cousins, he is like 35, coming off an Achilles injury.
Yeah.
Why not grab our quarterback of the future now and have him sit? I think the injury history has something to do with that too. Where if you have a guy who is prone to injury, like maybe sitting him for the first little bit is not bad. I think that all has to go into their thinking on it. And it's not like, I am with you here. It's not a pick I necessarily agree with, but it is a pick I understand the reasoning of.
Okay. Yeah, and that's fair. And that's a lot of very, very good points. I can't get past the fact that you can get elite quarterbacks at that 20 spot. It feels weird to waste such an elite spot where you
It's
could have
much more
brought
of
in
a
a guy.
crapshoot, though.
Yes, sure.
It's much more of a crapshoot.
But so is drafting drafting a guy like Penix here. Like it's you don't know
Yeah,
you don't know how happy he's gonna be with you in 5 years, as well as the way that I sort of look at it. Like, I mean, if Penix is all in for it, go nuts, right? But
he's getting paid a lot of money, a lot more than he
Sure.
probably would have.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? That's fair enough. Fair enough. If Penix is happy to sit on the bench for 4 or 5 years, knowing that that spot is his, what? Sure, right? It's just when I look at it solely from the perspective of a guy like Penix who he started in Washington. He had a very successful college career, and he probably thought that he was going to be starting in the NFL either in the next year or the year after. And now
I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because he was like, I know, like I just said, teams in the NFL were higher on him apparently. And he probably would have gone to the Raiders and started there, but I don't know. Like, he was viewed as kind of a fringe quarterback. Starting for him wasn't a guarantee.
okay. But even then, on a team that doesn't have Kirk Cousins, his chances of starting in the next 2 years are a lot higher. You have to admit that, right? Like, I think it would, if I was Atlanta, I think what I would have done is, if I wanted a quarterback, I would have taken one in the second or third round and let that quarterback sit behind Kirk Cousins. That would have made more sense to me. Sure, you're not getting the talent of Michael Penix, but you're getting a guy that you're still getting a guy who you can sit behind a guy like Kirk Cousins and potentially develop into a player like that. I guess that's just the way I look at it. I think it's a waste of a pick in a way.
The one counterpoint I have to that argument is there weren't any quarterbacks picked in the second or third round. There weren't any quarterbacks picked in the fourth round.
Never mind.
There weren't any quarterbacks picked in the fifth round with Spencer Rattler, where so the perceived I think Spencer Rattler should have been drafted higher. Like I don't think that would have been necessarily a bad move.
Yeah.
I think the pickup Rattler by the Saints is a really good one, but especially in terms of how it was viewed in the league, the gap between Bo Nix as the sixth quarterback and Spencer Rattler as the seventh is huge.
Okay.
Where we have a record amount of quarterbacks going in the top 12, and then we don't have another one until pick 150, whatever. It's the largest gap ever in terms of just pure pick.
Okay, then I retract my statement. Yeah. Okay, I retract my statement then. I did not know that, but at least that's more my philosophy when I look at it. It's just at that point you could have also, if you're gonna draft, you could have done that next year. I guess is more my point as well. You could have taken a quarterback at second next year, or in the second round next year. Like I just don't see the rush. I guess you shouldn't be in a rush to worry about the future. You just got a 35-year-old quarterback. You should probably be worrying about right now, because you don't want to waste Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins came here to win a Super Bowl. That's what he wants to do, and whether or not as of right now, and we spoke about this when he went there. I think we both said that while they'll be a contender, I don't think either of us really saw them as a very, very big Super Bowl contender. I think if they were to have gotten a really good weapon or somebody who broke out defensively, I think that changes. I think whatever they could have added, I think that changes their chances, at least in my own head. I mean, I guess that's the way I look at it. You're just ruining your chance at a Super Bowl now for a quarterback who might make you better than you would have been in the future. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think that's right. I think it depends on what mentality they had. Like if they are, like you said, like rushing to like get somebody for the future, and this is just like a pure impulse pick to be like, we need somebody to replace Kirk Cousins now, then I have a lot less faith in this pick. If they really do believe though that like what they saw from Penix on tape, in person, in meetings, like holy crap, this is a guy that we need. And this is a terrible comparison to make because it immediately sets the bar way too high. But in terms of anything that you go to and when sitting a year, the prime example is Mahomes, right? Where the Chiefs now hold up here. I'm not saying
yeah. All right.
And I think even the biggest Penix supporter will never go there. Yeah. But I think in terms of like, the Chiefs did already have a relatively competent older quarterback in Alex Smith. The Chiefs just loved what they saw from Mahomes so much that they traded up to pick 10 to get him and then sat him for a year. That's the kind of thing where I'm looking at this and I'm like...
It's the fact that you're not paying Kirk Cousins for a single year.
Exactly. You're paying him, although it could be only 2. I do think it's important to note that they probably will get out of this in 2 years. They probably will say goodbye to Kirk Cousins after 2 years, which, given how old he would be at that point, I don't think that's a bad move. I don't think it's necessarily bad to cover your tracks in that way. So I'm saying, like, to your point, yes, I think if they're rushing into this just to say, like, we need a backup plan immediately, if for some reason they're so fixated on that. But if they actually really loved Penix and, like, are drafting him because it's like, this is a special guy who we believe in and don't think is going to be available to us down the line, and we have a plan for him, most importantly, in terms of how we're going to develop him, then the pick looks a lot better for me. It's hard because we don't know what their mindset is.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like it. It puts a bad taste in my mouth, and it's even if they get out after 2 years, he will be starting in the NFL at what, 26, 27 for the first time, assuming Kirk Cousins doesn't get hurt, right? Assuming something doesn't happen there, his first real NFL start that won't be, I don't even know, because Kirk Cousins threw away a game in the first half or like whatever, right? His first actual chance being the head of a team will be when he's 26 or 27. That's just ridiculous to me. Like, it feels like you're just waiting so long. And to that sense, I don't like it. and I think I'm just repeating the same point over and over. But I mean, I don't know. It's just weird. It's just a
Yeah.
weird pick. It's
But yeah,
and I understand your point because it does make
it
sense. You
is
can understand
it
why
is
they did
thinking
it.
differently.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's a way
And
that I wouldn't have done it. I think it's a way that not many people would have done it, which is why both
yeah,
me and you I think had the exact same reaction, which was audibly swearing.
yeah.
But it was
And
like,
I mean,
yeah,
and I am going more for the devil's advocate thing because I don't
yeah.
necessarily agree with it, but again, I do see the reasoning behind it, and I can definitely make the argument as to why they should do it. And even along the lines of the age thing, is Penix a weird quarterback to do this with because he was already considered old for a quarterback in the
Yeah.
draft? Yeah, it is. But also, like, you say he started his first game at like 26. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Like thinking about Jordan Love, I don't think Jordan Love necessarily had all the pressure.
How old is Jordan
Um,
Love?
that I'm sure he's younger. I don't even know if I need to
Yeah.
check that, but I'm sure he was younger when he was drafted, or else that would have been a conversation too. Um, but with Jordan Love in that situation, I feel like there wasn't nearly as much conversation around Jordan Love when he started for the first time this year as there would be around Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, those quarterbacks drafted early. And maybe in that way, you take a little bit of the pressure off.
So
You get acclimatized to an NFL environment before you actually start, and then have to deal with all the media and all the pressure of starting immediately. I think that's what
I
taking
just
a
want to
year
point this out.
does.
Jordan Love started in the NFL for the first time, or after, because obviously he started I think once or twice before he actually got given the reins.
Yeah,
But his last year he started at 24 to really put
which
into
is how old
perspective.
Penix is now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Penix is literally I think less than 1 year younger than Jordan Love right now.
yeah. Which is
Which
a whole another thing because
yeah,
he's been in there for so long because of COVID, because of multiple injuries, right? Like
yeah.
he's a bit of an outlier in that sense.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll be looking down the road in 4 or 5 years, and I'm a big dum dum because I said that making this pick was stupid. But it's also the fact that like, what if they don't win a Super Bowl and Penix sucks? Like then you end up sitting here going like, what the hell? What was this all for? You wasted an
Yeah,
like the eighth overall pick on a quarterback who played one season, right? It's there's so
yeah,
in my opinion, it's just such a risky pick that you didn't need to make because you could have. I mean, you even pointed out the injury concerns. Like, what if he ends up coming to the NFL and gets hurt and that's it? You brought him up for like 1 or 2 years, whether like however many years because we don't know. Like you pointed out, they can get it out after 2 years, but what if they don't? Right? What if Kirk Cousins is playing great? What if you hold on to him? Right?
yeah,
And then you finally give him the reins. Everyone's excited. Holy smokes, this guy is the guy we've been waiting for. He's like 28 at this point, getting ready for his first real season. Gets hurt. That's it. And I know it's more pessimistic, but it's I don't know. You could have gotten literally anyone else, and nobody would have. It arguably would have been a smarter pick, at least in my opinion.
yeah. I don't necessarily disagree, but it is important perspective to have too. Like everything in the draft, that is kind of a crapshoot.
Okay, sure.
Because I mean, the guy who they were probably going to take at that pick could also suck, right? Like Dallas Turner, maybe he's not going to be good with the Vikings. Like Latu, who knows? He also has injury concerns. Maybe he gets injured and
Okay.
then has to. I
Yeah.
think he was already forced to medically retire. You can kind of do the will they won't they game, and it goes both ways. And it is kind of a thing where you have to look back in 10 years and say like, now was that a smart move or should I have just picked what people expected them to? Um, and then on the other end of that too, you say if Penix turns out to start for the Falcons for 10 years, nobody cares, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
nobody
There you
cares.
go. Well, I mean, and then again, who knows? We'll see.
It's
Whatever.
impossible to guess.
I've. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. That is where I fall on
It was against the grain, and
it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I can't as in a world where like a lot of the especially in this draft where a lot of the first few picks were very like chalky and exactly what we expect them to do. Like I can't blame them for trying to think differently and trying to do something else.